Hello, I am back once more. Let's sort of finish this Butcher Knight guy. I'm gonna do a third part on this because there's a lot more to do and also this video was long enough. We're gonna do some bronze here to start off. And as you can see, I have already sort of washed a dark green color onto the black to give it some sort of a verdigris from the start. Then I go in here with a warm reddish brown, my favorite reddish brown color. And I'm gonna find the places where the light would touch the color the most, or the parts the most. And this is just a very quick sketch, as you can see, a lot of texture and dots and lines and stuff like that, but there's going to be a lot more going on here. Just sketching out the volumes and where I would like to have some color other than the green-black tinged thing. This is also where we can start to look for edges and secondary light sources and bouncing lights and stuff like that. But I'm just gonna go simple on this, just to keep it fast, sort of. It's gonna take enough time as is, trust me. I'm also going over the edges of the shield, trying to get as much light at the lower part of the shield, because then the upper part is going to get light on the other side, to sort of insinuate that there's some sort of weird thing going on. I don't know, it's going to look cool, so I just stick with it. And when you see me edge highlighting here, it's very important to think about the sort of angle of the brush, because I'm putting the long edge, I'm not poking the edge, I'm actually painting with the edge of the brush instead of poking it. But then on the insides here you can see me actually having to do it the hard way, which is poking it. It's very much easier to edge highlight if you put the brush at an angle and just touch the side of the brush along the edge. And it's just dots, lines and other things to give it some sort of texture, because I want it to be beaten up. That's why we added the green at the beginning, because it's going to be old and sort of decayed and weathered, but at the same time we want to show that it's been through some use, and a shield is used to protect yourself from incoming arrows and swords and stuff like that. So it would be kind of textured, but you also want to have that verdigris in the recesses. And, you know, just look at it, see if you find a place where you want some more light, and then just add some of that brown on there. This is sort of the sketch that we're starting off with before we do what I just did, and that's to add one of my favorite colors, Sunny Skin Tone, to this mixture. To lighten it up, but it will not desaturate it very much, because we want to have some sort of a peachy, pinkish orange at the end of this in the highlights. To make it look kind of like bronze, I guess. I'm not very good at this. There's probably 1,000 painters on YouTube doing this a million times better than I am, but I'm having fun and I'm experimenting like all the time. Every single video I've made here that you guys have seen has been me experimenting with stuff that I usually perhaps do not do, because most of the time I am experimenting, because that's the way I keep the hobby fun for myself. And we're going over pretty much every single area that I just painted previously, but we're using a smaller area in that area, so we're leaving a part of the old color behind. But at some places you will see that I will go over that color completely, like at the top of the rounded part in the middle of the shield, because that's where I want the light to be the most extreme, and that's where I want the shine to come when you look at the model. And I'm making sure to keep that greenish color in the recesses to give the idea that there is an aged item with some wear and tear to it. And I'm not only putting the color on the top of the item, I'm also putting it on the bottom to reflect that the light is bouncing from the ground up and from other things close to the surface that I'm painting. As you can see here, I'm adding the line on the bottom of the thing in the middle of the shield, the embossed part. And that is to sort of show that there is something there. You don't have to go super high, you shouldn't go super high in the highlight there, but add one or two steps of highlights to the bottom part as well, and then you go up to a very, very bright part at the top of the item. and just going in and adding a little bit of off-white gray to this mixture for more highlights, and just keep at it, going smaller and smaller and doing textures with dots and lines and stuff like that. We want it to look rough. This is not a nice thing. It's gonna be rough. That's the thing. A lot of my videos with stuff that I paint is gonna be the rough keyword is gonna be in there. And finding those parts that are the most light, where the light will hit it hardest. The top angle there on the shield, for example, and also at the top of the rounded part is gonna get some very, very bright highlights at the end here. There's also some sculpted scratches on here, and I actually went in and did put a lot of highlights around those, as well as that Great Maw Grail thing at the middle of the embossed part of the shield. And that thing also gets a couple of extra sharp highlights with a lighter color to make it stand out from the background a little bit more. And there I made a little mistake, and I quickly wiped that away with my finger. You can do that. That is a possibility to use. I do it all the time. If you wipe it carefully, you can get away with it without destroying your paint job necessarily. Sometimes it doesn't work though, so be careful with that. Don't sue me if you mess up. Like, just scream at your parents instead or something like that. Here I'm rotating the miniature and looking for, like, do I want to add something, and I decided that I wanted some extra highlights on the top of it to really show that rounded area of and to draw some focus to that area, and also some extra highlights on other parts. But it's kind of good to just sometimes spin the model around, look at it from different angles to see if there's something you want to do better or fix, because it's never too late. This is acrylics, you know, you can always paint over stuff, and that's totally fine. And I do it, of course, because sometimes we do mess up, and sometimes we want to add stuff, and you want to subtract some things as well, I guess. That's fine. Just as long as you get the result that you want at the end of it, it doesn't really matter what way or what techniques you used to get there, right? And here I'm feeling a lot better about the highlights, and this is where I leave it. I didn't really do anything else to this after this, but I did paint some of the other parts that were bronze as well. And now it's time for a quick cloth tutorial, if you can call it that. I felt like I wanted to do a sort of a knightly thing, imagining this guy being a noble knight once in his life, and so I added a sharp, pretty contrasting happy color red to his cloth, but I also wanted to make it sort of disgusting, beat up, and never washed ever. So I start off here by just adding a dark red color to the folded parts so I can see the texture and sort of the volumes of the cloth that I'm going to paint. this is just to get a sort of feel of what it's going to look like, and I was also kind of looking for any sort of evidence of it perhaps not working as well as I thought it was going to be. And I felt that it's very red at some stage, but then I added a sort of the grayish pink color that I used on the skin. I added that to the highlight color to desaturate everything and make it look a lot more filthy and unclean and never washed ever. This guy obviously lives in this suit of armor and these clothes and stuff that he has on. So the only time anything gets washed is if it's raining on it, I guess. And since I'm looking for a very dark, muted color, I'm not going into the sort of more shadowed areas, because those are already shaded with the all over brownish wash that I did to start off the miniature in the beginning. So we have a very dark red already sort of in the shadows, because red and black becomes brown. And thus the sort of basic layer here is still a kind of a highlight on the cloth, if you get my meaning here. So we're already like a bit on the way here with the highlights, and now I'm just adding a little bit of that pinkish gray to this color and going really, really small on the top edges of these things, and also like along the frayed edges of the cloth, and of course if there's a sculpted hole in it or something like that. And you will be clearly able to see that the cloth doesn't really turn out red, but if you can look at it in different angles, it's going to be red-ish, which is good enough for me. That's going to sort of imply a heraldic noble knight that has fallen and is now doing the devil's work. Also, using the red color is going to set the cloth apart from the leather parts that I'm going to add in a little while, because there is no red in that color that I'm going to use. It's just a brown, but this one has a clear red color, and that's going to be one of those contrasting things. Remember, you want to add colors and stuff like that, but you do not want to mess up the contrast. You want to show that there's a difference between different things on the model. And now I'm just adding some smaller highlights and smaller like scratches and things along the edges of the cloth, because it is sculpted like it's fraying and sort of ruined in a way. So let's highlight that thing and make sure it looks ruined and kind of ugly and destroyed. And I think it got a kind of a cool look with it. It's a reddish, brown, black, dirty gray color, but it's gonna work fine for what I'm looking for here. It's not a big piece of the model anyways. I also took the time to paint in the scrolls that he has hanging from his loincloth, as well as on that sort of shoulder tilting shield that he has. And I did this with a off-white sort of color. It's grayish, beige or whatever. That's just going to be a good base color for what I'm going to do with it, which is I'm going to put some off-white gray into the color as well to highlight it, and then at the end of it all we're going to weather these things anyways, like pretty much everything on this model. There will be a weathering stage coming in the next video, I think. But before we do all of that, I need to paint them and highlight them and differentiate them a little bit, because I messed up with the top ones here, so I'm going to put a wash between them. And then I'm going to do some sort of lettering or something on them as well. That's going to be hard on camera, so I'm going to try to figure out how to do it on camera. Otherwise I might have to do it off camera and just tell you how I did it. But that's for the future. We're not going to do that now. And right now we're just going to paint them, highlight them, get some sort of volume to them, and also kind of get a feeling for the colors that we're going to go with on the model, because there's a lot of small details here on the front, and I want to have different colors on them, but some of them have to be sort of similar, and that's why I'm sort of adding these colors right now. Here I am going in with a sort of brown wash just to differentiate between these scrolls that he has, this leather patch scrolls things that he has on his shoulder, because I messed up and painted over like the edges here. And some extra highlights just to make them look weathered and worn, I guess. I just want to get the feeling of everything on this guy, that it's been thoroughly used and never ever has it been touched by some sort of cleaning up liquids or water unnecessarily, because he is kind of gross, right? That's the thing here. He's not a Nurgle guy from Warhammer, but still, he is not the most hygienic character on the table. And now it's time for the skulls. Since I am the kind of weird guy that I am, I really enjoy painting skulls. And for these ones, I decided I wanted a very, very neutral color. So I went with a basic, standard, non-colored gray, like simply neutral gray. And I'm going to highlight these up using just an off-white gray. So they are going to be very desaturated and very basic gray, because I could have done them the kind of beige color that people usually do skeletons and skulls in, but then it would clash with the parchment things that I recently painted here, and also it would kind of, they're gonna melt into the chains that are holding them as well, because they are going to be a sort of brass bronze-y color when I'm done, and also the leather straps that are holding the skulls to the chains would then also blend in with them a bit, because they were all going to be in this sort of beige brownish color range, and I didn't want that. So to differentiate them from pretty much everything that he has on the front, I just kept them in a very desaturated, boring ass gray thing, because that will make them stand out while not standing out, if you understand what I mean. They are also highlighted like I pretty much highlight all my skulls, and that's a very simple thing. I always pretty much start off with the forehead of the skull, and I add the color there, and then I take at the edge of the eyes and the forehead, you can draw a straight line up, and I always do a straight line there, and then I go over and do the brow, and then I do the top of the nose bone thing, and then I do the cheeks and the edges of the eyes, the eye sockets, and I go from them onto the side of the skull where you have the cheekbone going back, and I paint that, and then I just go down, do the teeth and the lower jaw and stuff like that. I do them the same all the time, and that's the way I do it, and that's the way I like to do them, because then I can get the volumes right, and I can get a look of how the skull looks. That gives me this feeling, should I add some color here, should I add this here, can I do this, can I do that, should I highlight this more. The trick is to definitely look at the volumes of something like a skull or whatever you're painting, and figure out what would be touched by the light and what would be in shadow. And for these skulls, some of them are hanging with face slightly down. That gives us a good opportunity to do a kind of a bright highlight on the back of the skull and the top of the skull, but keep the highlight parts of the faces a lot more simple and a little bit darker. And that's going to show off the way of the skull, the way it looks, and the way it's sculpted very, very well. And here you can see the skull that I did, and I painted the rest of them off cam, so you don't have to watch that. For the next part, we're obviously not in focus, but here we are. I did paint everything else, and now I'm gonna paint the cleaver. For this one, to differentiate the cleaver slightly from the armor, because I have sort of made the choice that this guy's steel is a blue steel. You can see that on the armor, and I want to keep that thing, but I also wanted to make it different from the armor. So instead of highlighting it up using a pale gray color, I added a yellowish color, one of the other favorite colors of mine, and favorite color of pretty much every painter online, ice yellow. The ice yellow into the dark Prussian blue is going to make it sort of greenish towards the highlights. Instead of a desaturated neutral gray to white color, it's going to be a little bit green. And that's going to set it apart just enough, I think, to make it more interesting than if it had been the same color. Then the same applies here. Like everything else on this model is going to get some weathering done in the next video, which will make it look a little bit more also like its own thing, instead of just the same sort of thing as the armor. And of course there's a lot of scratches and stuff. You can see it. I'm not blending this smoothly at all. It's just scratches and dots and lines, and those sort of textures are going to mix together at the end and make it look kind of nice. Here's another thing that I like when I'm gonna paint a weapon. I like the sort of, you can see these downward strokes that I'm doing along the edge here. That's gonna make it look kind of sharp, as well as rough, but it's gonna look sharp when you highlight those up. And I do that even if I do a true metallic weapon as well, because it makes it look kind of cool. And always never forget the rule of cool: if it's cool, it stays. It doesn't matter if it's not realistic or whatever. If you like it, it's cool, keep it, go for it. That's your thing. That's why I'm doing the things that I do, and I hope you can sort of get inspired by my videos, but do not, please do not copy me, because you are probably a lot better than I am anyways. And here I am once again, edge highlighting stuff. On blades, I like to edge highlight every single edge. Perhaps not up to the brightest highlight. I usually reserve those to like edges that are facing upwards, or the cutting edge, as in this case, because the cutting edge is supposed to be sharp, and the eye will interpret the very bright highlight as if it was sharp, even though it's pretty much not. And once again in with those sharpening lines, or whatever we're gonna call them, this time in a smaller area, to show off the earlier colors and also to get some more color on there. You can see I'm just going over, like, doing dots and small texturized lines and random just weird stuff, as well as accentuating the sculpt itself, because it does have some pitting in these in this weapon. But mostly just adding extra detail and extra fun stuff to sort of hide how bad I am at blending things. So it's gonna look nice and okay, I guess, but actually in reality it's so bad. It's not good. And here we have the blade. It doesn't look like it's pretty pleasant to get, like, thrown at you, or somebody like hitting you with that thing. It looks like it's gonna give you every single kind of weird disease, and you're definitely gonna have to take your tetanus shots afterwards. And here I'm looking at it again, like, do I want some more? And then I go in and I add a little bit extra. Like I did with the shield, I'm looking for, like, yeah, am I done or am I not done? Do I finish this, write this, or should I just add more? And then I went like, yeah, well, what the hell? Just add more. More is more, like Yngwie once said. And for the final part of this video, we're going to do the leathers. And this isn't very hard. It's just the same reddish brown that I've been using all the time, which I really like. And I'm just gonna paint the entire leather parts in this. And on top of that, I then use that sort of pinkish gray color and mix it into the brown to get a highlight color. And to highlight it, that's where we go differently from, like, if this was something smooth and soft, because this is old, beaten up, worn leather. So we want to add some dots and lines for texture on top of the brown color. If I would do this in a very simple way, without like doing 1,000 little small dots and lines, I would kind of do a rushed job with some dots and lines and then put a wash over it, like the Games Workshop does this perfect Reichland flesh shade wash that's awesome for doing this sort of thing, where you just texturize the thing, put the wash over it, go back in, texturize it again a little bit here and there in parts that you haven't texturized before, and then you put a wash on, and then you repeat that one step again, and that gives you sort of a deep looking leather, but it's a lot faster, even though it's more steps than doing it this way, because this way you actually have to do very, very small dots and lines to add those stress marks, I think they're called, to the leather parts. Who knew that there was so much leather on this guy? By the way, there's a lot of small straps. And when you're highlighting leather, don't forget that even though you're adding these texturized lines and stuff like that, you also have to be mindful of where the light is coming, so that the uppermost part of the leather strap or whatever you're painting gets the highest highlight as well, to keep the volumes doing what they're supposed to do, showing you where light is and where the shadow is and stuff like that. And since this is a miniature, we have to add that ourselves. We can't just evenly highlight this and hope it's going to look good, because it's not going to do that. That's the leather. Look, all those small lines, I did those with that brush. Holy crap. And this is how far we got this time. Next week I'm going to do the base and all the small stuff on him, so keep your eyes open for that thing. Do you have any comments? Do I do things the wrong way? Tell me, yell at me in the comments. I would love to see what you think. Well, that's the end of this one, I guess. So like and subscribe if you want to. I'm not gonna hunt you down and force you to do it, but I should, I guess. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching me and listening to my droning voice. This has been awesome. You've been awesome. I have been mediocre or something. Thank you once again, and goodbye. See you next time.